Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today for our teacher reset. I'm so glad you're here. We're going to spend our next 30 minutes just going through some ways that we can do exactly as we see on screen there, refresh, recharge, and reignite our joy for teaching. If you're anything like most educators this time of year, you're carrying a mix of emotions. You're relieved that the school year is over, but also exhausted, right, from everything you've poured into your students this school year, and maybe even a little uncertainty about how to truly rest before next school year. So I think, it's a great time to kind of do this very thing, where we just reflect on our year and look forward to what is ahead of us for next year. My name is Jamie McPherson, and like I said, I'm really glad you're joining in with us today. Just a few quick housekeeping pieces to roll us forward here. So this will be recorded. So anything that you would like to revisit later, you'll be sent a link to that recording. Also, the resources for this webinar is right there. So you can scan that QR code and you'll have access to this slides presentation. You could also visit that bit.ly, which Robin is going to put into the chat for us, which reminds you that Robin is here to help us out as well today. She is here for everything and anything tech related. Robin, did you want to say hi today?
Of course. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Happy early summer.
Awesome. Thanks, Robin. And as I mentioned, Robin is kind of just behind the scenes working if anything comes up, but she will also be putting these links into the chat as needed. And so with that, we'll jump in and we will get started. So I want to first start by just thanking our sponsor, which is VAI Educator Studio. If you have not heard of this resource that lives out there yet, please check it out. This is a wonderful resource packed full of classroom tested strategies and resources for deeper learning and really doing what we always like to say, building learners who utilize things like curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking. And it is really a tool for all of you, though. So you can scan that QR code, and if you put in, that'll take you to you'll kind of see what it's all about. And then if you put in the code "thank you," if maybe this is something you're interested in purchasing, you'll save 20% off the annual membership fee. So go ahead and, like I said, at least check it out and see what's available there. When I say there's hundreds of resources, I really mean it. There are hundreds of things that you could look through and utilize. Let's say you had to step in the classroom again tomorrow, which you don't, but if you did, you could utilize them. They're usable tomorrow if you had to. So check those out, and I think you'd be really happy with what you see there. So let's jump in and talk about what we're going to cover today. So we're going to take 7 stops on our teacher reset journey. So we're going to talk about noticing joy in the ordinary moments, letting go of the burdens that you don't need to carry forward any longer. Also, just creating space for rest, clearing our mental clutter, and also celebrating your wins. And there were a lot of them, I'm sure, this year. So there's also an important component of this rest thing where we just design a time for us. So can you find in your time designing a day just for you? And also just thinking about how you can reconnect with your purpose. So some of these ideas are practical, some of them are reflective, but all of them are invitations to just give it a try and see if it helps you kind of really look back and reflect on the wonderful year or challenging year that you had, but there is goodness in all of it. So I want to start by jumping into our first idea here, which is just romancing the ordinary. So really this is about, kind of reminding ourselves that joy doesn't always come from those big vacations or those huge accomplishments or those life-changing moments. Sometimes joy is just it's hiding right in front of us. And so I think sometimes that's hard to recognize. And so if we just as educators just take a moment to think about, those simple moments that we have that do bring us joy and excitement, that's really valuable. So I know as educators, we're trained to look ahead, right? We're constantly looking for that next thing or that next barrier that might get in our way. And we're always thinking what's next. But sometimes it's just if we can kind of let go of those what's next questions and just kind of think about those small, simple things like the smell of coffee in the morning, right? Or when you're the quietness of a morning, maybe if you have families at home before the kids get up. Maybe it's just the sunlight that comes through the window. Like that's such a simple thing but to remember that, that is also, there's a lot of greatness in those simple moments. So just remembering that, slowing down and giving yourself the time to really consider those things and putting a spotlight on those really simple moments. The next thing to kind of just consider is just that simple mindset shift that can be difficult sometimes is moving from like getting through the day, which we know that's how we kind of live in our teacher world often, is just let's just get through the day, to looking for something within the day. And I think it's that simple switch of language that we use in our self-talk. Because we're constantly living in that survival mode during that school year. And so when we do that and we're forced into that space, we miss out on a lot of those things that are existing around us. So challenge yourself to notice, maybe one just really cool or beautiful thing that happens every day. Some people like to journal, and I think that's a great idea. Like jotting those little ideas down and revisiting them really shows you that a lot of good has happened, and you are able to find those moments again. And really just challenge yourself to find one, not 5, not 10, just one. And again, jot it down, remember it, revisit it, and try to make that an everyday practice. I do think that helps a little bit. Now, as we go through, and here's our first example of this, for all of you that are here today, you have the opportunity to just reflect on a thought or an idea, and through a Google form. So if you scan that Google form, that QR code, it's going to take you to a Google form, which has an opportunity for you to reflect. So you'll just open that up, you'll jot your answer down there. You can also go to that bit.ly you see on screen there, bit.ly VAI teacher giveaways. That'll get you there as well, just like you see it there. And Robin, I know, is going to be putting those in the chat. But here's the question, the first one to kind of get us started. And this one is for a Starbucks gift card, which we need coffee during the school year. Yes, we also need during the summer. So let's just try this one out. Thinking about if a filmmaker followed you around, say today or tomorrow, what scene would they turn into like a slow motion, soft music moment? So what might they really look at? It's all about honing in on those small moments. What would that moment look like? So go ahead in the Google form that you have scanned or that you have typed in and that you have arrived at, go ahead and put in your response to that. Thinking about if a filmmaker followed you today, what scene would they turn into a slow motion, soft music moment? I'll give you a second to think about that. Now, I also want to say, as you're doing this, so these will all be available to you. You don't have to necessarily get them all done in the moments today because we only have 30 minutes together. But with that said, you'll be able to revisit that Google form up until Friday. So you can fill in these answers through Friday. I will say Friday evening is when I plan to put the names in, randomly draw out all the names for each of the prizes you see. So you will be hearing from me probably by Monday of next week if you are a prize winner to get further information from you. So with that said, hopefully you're able to reflect on that moment, and I will jump into our next important idea today. All right, so the next one is just unpacking your teacher backpack. So what this really is kind of, okay, not the literal backpack, of course, maybe you have to do that too, but the invisible one, the one filled with responsibilities, expectations, worries, and the emotional weight that just comes with a school year and the job that you do every day. So thinking about how you can actually let go of that, and what does that actually look like? And sometimes, it's recognizing a few things, like, sometimes we might have in our backpack, like, the self-doubt calculator, right? It's like you're constantly calculating and thinking, and doubting every move you do, and wondering if it calculates correctly and it wasn't the right thing to do. There's also those endless to-do lists, right, that are out there that which you can just push aside and maybe even throw away, even better, because you are now on, officially on, some sort of summer break. The length of that depends on where you are teaching, but there is a break, and I really invite you to start unpacking those things that have been weighing you down throughout the school year and those challenges, and finding a way to invite in some room for other things. And so I want you to kind of imagine that your teacher backpack has magical powers. So when you unzip it, one invisible burden floats out and disappears forever. What just escaped? What was that invisible burden that just kind of flew out of your backpack that you're like, yep, I'm so happy I can let go of that and move on? You can go ahead and, again, in that same Google form, you're going to pull that one back up. You'll see a space for this question there. And you can access that by the QR code or by the bit.ly that you see on screen, and also is in the chat. So I'll give you a second. The prize here is a fun one. I use these every day. I actually have one right now. But these little flare felt tip pens are amazing. So we're going to send you a pack of those for you to use. Hopefully you don't even open up that pack and put it in your teacher backpack until the start of next year. But that is the prize for this reflection question. So go ahead and just fill out, what you would, what would float out of that? What would disappear? What burden would disappear forever? We all probably have one of those, at least one of those things, right? That we want to just fly out and never return back. So I'll go ahead and keep rolling on here. And again, like I said, no rush to get these in right away. You can reflect on these through our time together today, but also in the evening and tomorrow and the next day as well. So this next idea is this idea of cocoon time. So, it's just giving yourself the permission to say that you are allowed to do nothing. And I know that is really hard to do, is giving ourselves that permission. It really is. But sometimes you just need permission to give yourself permission to simply just rest. And so I think sometimes, when we give ourselves that permission, we kind of believe that we should be resting and doing this one thing, and resting and doing this other thing, because you're multitasking all through the year. But I think celebrating and just being intentionally still, and maybe even, I know this word is almost foreign to us as teachers, but experiencing boredom, what is that actually like, right? I think it's really important to avoid feeling guilty for doing that very thing, because you do deserve this time to just kind of wrap yourself up and call. And if that's what you decide to do for several hours, or maybe even the entire day, and maybe you place yourself on the beach if you have access to one while you're doing it, you have permission to do that. And so, even a challenge of thinking about maybe having a blank space day into your summer where your time is protected and you get to do that very thing, and protecting it, not letting anything else kind of take over that time. I think that's important to consider and try to do as well. So again, just thinking about if you gave yourself a full day with zero obligations, how would you spend it? And then, of course, not feel guilty about it. So what would you do on that day to yourself? That is the third question you should find on that Google form there. So go ahead, again, scan the code or type in the code if you're not there yet. But this one is for an opportunity to win an Amazon gift card. So who doesn't love Amazon? So we'll be sending that your way if you are the winner of this reflection question. So again, thinking about maybe you can use your Amazon gift card to spend on that day that you have planned just for you. Maybe it's a good book, whatever it may be, but the choice will be yours if you're the winner of that Amazon gift card. So go ahead and fill out, what would you do if you could fill your day and not feel guilty about it? I'll give everyone just a couple more seconds to think about that. And if you are filling it out as you go along, great. All right, we'll move into this next idea. Idea 4, which is just thinking about decluttering your mental desktop. Now, if your brain currently feels like you have 47 browser tabs open, you are not alone. That is the feeling that many of us have, I think, and that's a very normal thing to feel. But, when we think about how much we accumulate over the course of a school year, we're constantly popping open a new tab, and very rarely do we get to close those tabs, right? They're constantly going, and we get such satisfaction when we can actually X out that tab and close it down because we found some closure to it. But generally speaking, as educators, we know that we're constantly filling our brain up more and more and more. So this is a little bit about giving yourself permission that you can let go of those things, like remembering the name of every password that you've had to remember for your school year, remembering that one thing that was left out of a staff meeting that you wanted to bring up that you didn't, or it might be that one staff meeting that could have been an email, right? We hang on to all these things, and there's constantly so much being put on our plate as educators. So I like to kind of consider this as an opportunity to just know that, while these tabs are running in the background, you have permission now to just let them all go and press X on, actually, figuratively in your mind on all of those things. And think about though, like what is it that you would actually, what are the tabs you'd want to keep open? And I think this is really important that we archive those special moments, those thank you notes that we get from our teacher, or excuse me, from our students who, maybe they didn't speak too much in class, or maybe they didn't show much emotion in the moments, but they gave you a really nice note at the end of the school year that just really made you realize why you're in this thing we call teaching, right? Maybe it's that goofy inside joke that, kind of your class caught on and kind of became the thing that everyone said or did or you talked to, right? The growth you saw happen because of you, right? There's a lot of growth that our students do every year, and it is because of you. And so I think just recognizing that and knowing that, every little win is really big, and sometimes we don't even see the full win, out loud. We tend not to, because we're only with our students for such a short time. But they'll take you with them in a lot of ways, and so I think there's so much to archive with honor and be really proud about, and even just those little oddities and the uniqueness that teaching brings in general, but probably that you built within your classroom that really made your classroom buzz with joy. And we can all find those moments, but I say to really think about them. You probably might want even to write those things down and save them, because it is such an important thing to kind of reinvigorate our love for this thing we do each and every year. And so with that, let's just think about if your brain just popped open like a computer screen, tabs were everywhere. What's one mental tab that you're dragging to the trash icon? You're going to throw it away. And then what's one that you're going to pin for later? So, think about the positive, the negative. What's one you're like, I'm going to get rid of this because this happened and this was no longer, I no longer have to worry about this. I'm going to close it down. And then what's one you're like, oh, I'm going to put a pin in that. That really brought me joy or excitement or happiness, and you want to keep that one. So, and maybe, when you think about it today, it still brings you a level of joy. So again, that is our prompt for this one. What would those two tabs be? We're going to send you a morning mindset journal, which I really love this. I actually have this one, and I really do love it. I think it's got great insight and just quick little things you could read during a busy school year to start the day off, and spots for you to journal that as well. So that is the prize for this question, or this reflection question. So go ahead and get your answers in there, your responses in there. And for those who may have joined a little bit late, no worries. You'll have an opportunity to revisit all those questions and all those ideas that we have already went through. And you'll also be able to access the Google form through Friday. So at the end of the day, Friday, I'm going to draw names, and the prizes that you're seeing now are the prizes that we'll pick a winner for each of these prizes, and we'll get some information from you to send that your way. All right. Moving into this next idea here, which is just thinking about, creating your own highlight reel. Like, if you were to, think about your life as a movie, what are some of the things that you would realize, or those moments you'd want to hang on to, and realize that, in a lot of ways, you are probably the hero in more moments than you would ever be able to realize. So sometimes day to day, it's easy to forget the wins. And it's also really easy to remember those things that were challenges, right? We tend to hang on to those a little more. So just kind of reflecting and looking back to remember that your year was filled with lots of good wins. And I think that's important. Again, kind of talking to all those ideas that we've mentioned so far, but I think it's really, really important to reflect on that. So just remember that your reel really is, essentially, it's a reminder of who you are. And so when you think about it in that context of, replaying it in your head, what's the story you're telling yourself? I think sometimes we have to reframe and really look at things as, that challenge, there was actually a win at the end of it, and this was the win, and that's what we should focus on. And that's really hard to do sometimes, but I think it's really, really important to remember, like, all those wins, as a result of who you are for your students, and that role you really played in their life. So thinking about that, I also think this is a great opportunity to remember to all the funny things your students say, right? And so sometimes we jot things down and we remember, so and so said this and it was really funny, or we share it with a colleague. All those moments. Think about if you had a place to store all of those, right? And so from day to day, month to month, year to year, the compilation of fantastic quotes that you would have. I think that's really important to think about and do. So this journal, I actually didn't know something like this existed, but it does. Things my students said, it's just a place to hold all of those memories. And so it gives you space to jot down all of those funny things, has room for like the date and to tell a little more about it. That is the prize that we're giving away with this question 5, creating your highlight reel, just kind of looking back. What would your story say? What would your movie look like? Is that kind of the idea there, and reframing it to be highlight on those positive wins. So let's just say the credits are rolling on your school year documentary. What surprise scene made it into the highlight reel? So something maybe unexpected. And why would future you want to rewatch that moment over and over again? So it could have been maybe that student who was really challenging throughout the school year, but finally came around and you felt like you saw that light bulb come on, or you saw some sort of growth in their learning. Maybe that was it, right? And you want to replay that over and over again. It could have been a different kind of win as well, but what would that be for you? So if you think about your time this past school year, what would your win look like? What would your documentary story be that you'd want to press rewind, replay several times over? I'll go ahead and give everyone a second or two to answer that. And again, you have till Friday to get these all filled out. So no feelings of rush or anything there. We will make sure to wait until the end of the day on Friday, and you will find out on Monday if you are a winner of one of these prizes. Okay, so moving into this next idea of designing your ideal day. So if you could design your ideal day, what would it look like? And I like thinking about that, because I think not only thinking about it, but maybe even, designing it. And we'll get there in a moment, actually doing it. And I always like to preface this conversation with the fact that, we're always so great as educators and parents and those and caretakers as scheduling for others, right? But we hardly ever take that time to schedule for ourselves. So, just being a master of your craft, you're really good at, planning, whether that be for students, whether that be for the classes that you're teaching, whether that be meetings. But rarely do we give ourselves permission to kind of plan out a day that's just for us. And so this talks to a lot of the ideas. We're building upon the ideas we mentioned earlier, but I think this is so very important to consider. What would your day look like? And so filling that script and building that day that is just for you, is just thinking about that alone is probably pretty gratifying, right? And taking it to the next level, actually doing it, is something I just encourage everyone out there to try and do. And I know it's difficult, but I really emphasize the importance of doing such a thing. And remembering that it's not necessarily just about being productive all the time. And we get on this mode where it's that survival mode where we just think we're constantly having to make sure we're doing this and make sure we're doing that, because there's some result that we need at the end of it. Rarely do we think about doing just a day just for pleasure, those things that bring us happiness, those things that bring us satisfaction. And it could be as simple as planning a beach day, right? And I know I mentioned that before, but maybe it's just sitting outside on a swing and just reading all day long, right? It can look it doesn't have to be packed full of things. It can be a few simple things. Or if you're an adventurous spirit, you could pack it full of all the things that you just didn't get a chance to do during the school year. Thinking about things like what is it that fills your cup up, what restores your joy, your peace, and your curiosity, and getting those things with pen on a paper and setting those on your calendar and making it a day. And even if you can't devote a full day, which again I know is wonderful to think about, but sometimes not practical to do, could you give 10% of your day to you, right? Because that's still a win. And so I think it's important to think about that. Even if you could give 10% of your day to you, what would you do during that time? You have a few hours to yourself. What would that look like? And then, like we mentioned earlier, just really being good about, making sure that time is for you and you only. So again, thinking about honoring the spirit of who you are and all that you've went through this year, and just asking yourself this question, what's one tiny piece of this that I can do next week, right? And so planning those out in the near future rather than saying, oh, I'll get to that in August, right? Because we all know when August comes what you're doing. We all know you're already back in the classroom, right? And you're already planning. So make this something that you could do right now while you maybe have some time to do it. And don't hold it off more than a couple of weeks, and start there. And if, you'll probably realize like, wow, that wasn't that difficult to plan for myself. I'm going to do that again. And how great would it be if you could look back on your summer and be like, I devoted 5 days where I was able to just devote them to me. I think that's important, and it is not selfish. So again, giving yourself permission to do that is really, really important. Teaching is a hard thing. And you deserve all that time. So let's think about this. If you are, if you are to go into next school year, before you go into there, I want you to think about between now and then. There's many days that we can plan for, right? Maybe you can shoot a goal of maybe 7 or 8 days. That would be awesome. But now let's think immediately. If we have tomorrow, that's completely yours. No obligations, no guilt around it, just space to kind of feel like yourself again, re-energize. What would your day look like? And I say on here hour by hour, but you don't necessarily have to do that. Just a walkthrough of like what you would do, right? And I think writing it down is the first step after thinking it up, is really writing it down and holding yourself accountable to do that. So where would you go? Who would you be talking to? Who's at your table with you? And what does that exactly look like? So think about that. And go ahead and fill out that QR code. Now, I think I forgot to put what the prize is on this slide. So if there's a prize on that slide that's noted there, I'll give that prize away. But I'll also give away we talked about our sponsorship slide, the Educator Studio. What I would love to do is, if there is not a prize listed there, I will give 2 Educator Studio codes out to the winners, where you will get all of those resources we mentioned at the beginning of this webinar. You will have a 1-year membership to the VAI Educator Studio. So go ahead. That's a huge win. It's so jam-packed of strategies, ideas, resources, everything from science lessons to PBL units. There's so much there. So check that out. We'll revisit that code at the end, but let's give away 2 here. So there's gonna be 2 prizes. It might be 2 VAI Educator Studio memberships. It might be 1 whatever prize is living in that Google form, if it does, and Educator Studio your membership as well. So go ahead and fill that out. I'll give you guys a minute to do that. And we're going to get ready to move into our last idea of the day on our teacher reset journey here. Okay, and so this one is returning to our why, kind of reconnecting to your passion and your purpose, and remembering why you decide every single day to get back up and hop into that classroom again. And we know it's far more than just because we love teaching math, or we love getting a paycheck, which of course we could say yes to both of those things. But when you're in teaching, you're doing it likely for so much more than that, right? So how do we reconnect to that why? So it often gets buried beneath the what, right? And so sometimes that why gets a little cloudy, and we're wondering, because we're constantly answering to the what. What is it that we have to do each and every day? Day-to-day tasks require us to put the what ahead of the why. But I want you to remember like why you're here. Why are you still deciding that teaching is the career path for you? And just to remember too that passion just doesn't just disappear like those ideas floating out of our backpack. They don't, right? The passion stays there. It doesn't just disappear. But it can get lost. And so just reminding yourself how you can, if you pretend like you're a radio, how you can turn that passion volume back up and restore that why again. And remember that it doesn't have to be big or noble. It just has to be your why. And I think that's awesome. I remember a teacher telling me one time that they enjoyed going to class. Just what woke them up every day and got them into the classroom every day was hearing their kids laugh. And their students laugh. And I thought that was that's so simple, and we can all do that, right? And so just an everyday little simple reminder, nothing too grand, just something simple. And that kept them coming back day after day after day. And we all have those things. Sometimes it's just helping kids feel seen, sharing, maybe it's you sharing your love of, say, science or math, or, your love of literature. Whatever that is, just remembering that. and knowing that, that is really important to get us to come back. So, and again, your why, I like to say this too, that your why might have shifted. And oftentimes throughout our career, it does shift, right? And that's okay. So maybe you used to love inspiring students, their creativity and seeing that side of them come out. But now it's maybe in mentoring new teachers who come into your district, and you recognize that that's a passion of yours. It could also just be on, maybe it's reflecting on, the things that you have, that list that you went through of all those good moments. It's just a recap, like remembering all those things, right? All those things accumulate into your why, right? It might just be one simple thing. It might be an accumulation of several things. But I think reflecting on all those moments allows us to have energy as we go into next year, and even getting excited about next year now, whether you're like on, you're scrolling on Facebook. And the one thing that always gets me are like seeing all the classroom makeovers. I don't know why I get so excited about that, but seeing the classroom spaces made over, I'm like, that's so exciting, right? And seeing that fresh start again, and knowing that next year is a fresh start. So that's always a great reminder. And I think just remembering that, passion is a renewable resource in a sense, right? But only you have the power to protect it. So, not losing sight of what that is, knowing that it can be renewed, it can be reinvigorated, but you have to want to still protect that thing that gets you back into the classroom every year. Make a plan. How will you nurture this, this summer? Is it maybe you start reading a book, like some sort of, like, I like to say professional development books, or self-help books is maybe a better word, but those books that are out there, there's so many wonderful educators out there who have books. Maybe tackling a book or an idea that you've wanted to look into a little further, that could also help reinvigorate our love of teaching. It could also remind us that teaching is still right around the corner, so you might want to avoid that. But again, just making a plan. It might be listening to a podcast, maybe collaborating with a teacher at your school and visiting them a couple times throughout the summer just to kind of talk about next year. Or maybe it's a passion project that you've always wanted to do, and this year you maybe are thinking about finding the space to make it a reality. But again, finding what your why is to keep you from burning out is really, really important, and just remembering that. So think back to a moment this year when you felt like most like the teacher you wanted to be. So think to that moment. What were you doing in that moment? Who were you with? What made that moment meaningful? All those questions are important to think about. But again, just respond with with that idea of, when you felt most like yourself, I was that. And so reflect on that question there. And again, I took away the giveaway here, but it's going to be something really great, I promise. I think it's actually a book, and I don't exactly know the book it is, but I will make sure it's a really great one, and one that I have tried and true, that I really love. So again, fill out that, and if that's not the prize, you get whatever prize on that Google form. So the winner of that will get that prize too. So go ahead. There's a prize for every single one of these ideas shared today. So there will be at least 7 prizes. I've already promised 8, so there's at least 7, 8, maybe even 9. So go ahead and fill that out, and we will be in contact with you if you are the winner of that prize. And I want to remind you, I want to say thank you, and I don't say that lightly. I say that with a whole lot of meaning behind it, because the job you do every day, you are the only one who could fill those shoes. And so thank you so much for your time, your energy, your love, your passion. And if there's something that I can do to help you on that journey, I'm always an email away. I'll be sending out an email. I think actually Robin's going to be sending out an email. You'll receive an email from her with a way to hopefully reach us. I will make sure that in this presentation there is my email address, which I did not put at the beginning this year, but I will definitely add that in after we get off today. But again, I want to remind you too of that great resource out there. Check out the Educator Studio, full of resources you can use if you had to go back in the classroom tomorrow, and code thank you will actually get you 20% off. So take advantage of that code. And again, you'll see an email address for me worked into this presentation. Robin's going to be sending you a follow-up email with all these resources. So you have till Friday to get those reflection responses in, and I will let you know if you are a winner. So we'll be in touch very soon if you are. But have a wonderful, relaxing, enjoyable summer. And as I mentioned, remember that you are deserving of the time. So take advantage of you time. This is the time to do it. Thank you so much for being here today, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful summer.